How's it going, everybody, and welcome to the Mina channel. This is Kuro. Today we're gonna be reviewing the Caligula Effect, and before we begin with this, I just want to say two things. First one is thank you so much at NIS America for providing a review copy for this. I'm definitely very happy to be able to play this game and give it another chance. The second thing is this video will not contain spoiler. However, I will be showcasing the first hour or two of the game, as well as giving you a little synopsis of what the game is about, but nothing will spoil the game or anything like that. And one final thing, which is not part of those two things, basically, I know I wasn't a fan of the first game, and I kind of feel obligated to say that because I feel like my perspective is going to be a little bit different from other perspectives, mainly some people that really enjoy the game, but I was in a camp of like I love the first game or anything like that, but I feel like I need to mention that just for so to show there's no any kind of bias or anything like that. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump right into the review. So right off the bat, one of the things that I want to say that this game took me out by surprise is one, this game actually does try to kind of tell you that this is going to be a sequel to the Caligula Effect 2. Now, I knew that this was a sequel, I knew this was a continuation, but I really didn't actually know that this game actually takes off a few years after the first game. So it does have recurring characters, it does have a recurring storyline from the first storyline. However, worry not, because what they do here is they actually give you some information. They tell you kind of what happened in the first game. They kind of spoil you the ending of the game. So if you're interested in playing Caligula, the first game, you might want to play that one before you play this one, because they will spoil you the first game if you haven't played it already. And the story, it goes very similar to the first one, actually almost hand in hand, super similar to that. You are the main protagonist here. You kind of awaken out of this dream after you be having these kind of nightmares, and a individual called virtual doll kind of shows up to you and kind of awakens you and tell you that the world that you're living in is kind of some sort of lie, basically. And now you have to help this goddess, this virtual doll, to kind of unlock the mysteries of what's going on here. It looks like the goddess in this game is actually the daughter of the goddess from the first game, and she kind of trying to show that her mother is actually not the one behind the events in this game. Now you kind of have to partner up with a goddess, a couple of your other friends, to unlock the mystery and make sure that you resolve this, escape this kind of nightmare, this dream world that you're living in. Overall, I think the storyline is pretty good. I don't think it's necessarily bad. I just think that it's very similar to the first one. However, it's actually much better told. I think that the from a standpoint of somebody that has played the first one but did not really like it, I think this one does a really good job of introducing characters, introducing settings, introducing the mystery, introducing additional characters, and kind of giving you the meat of the game. It does a really good job. Within like 2 hours, you're kind of just into everything. It gives you storyline, it gives you gameplay, gives you kind of just the basis of what you need to know about the game, and it does such a good job as kind of getting you into the game. I think that this game does a better job exposing kind of like the mystery of the game and everything, because I don't think the first game does a pretty good job as kind of getting you hooked in the game. But honestly, with the first hour, I was already like, this is already better than the first game. The introduction is much more interesting, the characters are really interesting too, and what they do with kind of just introducing you everything all at the same time, but also giving you some time to breathe in certain parts, is it makes the pacing feel more adequate for this kind of game, connecting the storyline and everything. And I'm proud to say, and I'm happy to say, that when it comes to storyline and storytelling, this game blows the first one out of the water. I think they did such a good job as kind of introducing characters and villains as well, because they do have a big cast of villains here, just like the first game, and they kind of do a good job as introducing you of what the issue is and what needs to happen for the rest of the storyline. Which it leads me to say, overall, I want to say the story is really good. It's much better than the first one. One of the things that was really disappointed on the first game, was the way that they approach a lot of the storytelling in the game. It was just kind of boring for me at times. The pacing wasn't there, and I thought there was a lot of potential for the series. But actually, playing the second one, I'm really happy to say that the issue, one of the biggest issues that I had with the game, is really solved here. And they did such a good job as far as getting you that additional story bits that you kind of need to know, kind of getting you, showing you the characters, kind of giving you that additional interaction that you need and everything. Really good stuff there. So moving into kind of one of the other things that I thought it was interesting is, it's no surprise by the way, but this game just looks way better than the first one. And I know I'm not one to talk too much about graphics or how graphics affect, or much on the graphics area, but this game actually does such a better job as far as like showcasing the character models are like way better. The locations look better too. They just did such a better job as kind of showing everything about like the school, the locations, the way that they approach the conversations with the characters and everything. The graphics on like whenever the transitions between when you're fighting and the actual fighting and everything, it's just so much better than the previous game. I don't know what the issue was with the first game when it comes to that, because I wasn't necessarily like super hooked into it, but this game just does such much better job as kind of getting you into the rhythm of the game. They finally found a good art style for it. Like, not to say the first one didn't have a good art style, because it did, but it looked off, and you can kind of see a comparison here between the first game and the second game. But I wasn't particularly impressed with how the game looked, and I know a lot of people, though they don't necessarily play games for graphics, you also sometimes judge games by the way that they look, and unfortunately the first game didn't look good. However, the second game does look really decent. The characters, again, whether it's the character models or the graphic character that's shown on the side, or kind of just showing you the rest of the cast and everything, or the locations that you visit when you're in the city or when you're in the school, everything just looks fantastic. I think they did such a great job as far as like revamping the game, because the game desperately needed. I think that was one of the worst parts about the game, is just how empty and how bland the game looked. But this one is bright, it's poppy, the use of colors is fantastic, the shading is so much better in this game, the music is phenomenal too, although it doesn't even get monotone, because it changes at certain parts of the battle and everything, and it does a pretty good job as far as giving you so many different aspects of the game that I just feel like it really just improved in every aspect, in when it comes to storytelling or graphics or music or just the showcase in general. It's definitely much better. But moving on to the last part, and this is just basically the gameplay, and honestly the gameplay is something that I always been kind of attracted to as an RPG fan. Obviously, if you're an RPG fan, if you like games like Persona or SMT or any other turn-based RPG, you're gonna be interested in playing other type of games, and definitely this one does something interesting with that. Well, as much as I like the gameplay in the first game, I actually was expecting them to really rework the gameplay on the second game, and by that I mean the core RPG gameplay. However, unfortunately, although they did some changes graphically speaking, and certain mechanics work a little bit different, the gameplay is pretty much the same. And they say often, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And sure, well, I'll say definitely the game wasn't broken or anything like that on the first game, and obviously they repurposed the gameplay in this game, but I really didn't feel much of a change from game to game. Mechanics do get more interesting and more advanced as you progress to the game. However, I never really felt, which is one of my major complaints in this game, any kind of difficulty spike or anything like that, or like I never really felt like the mechanics were doing more than I needed to learn or anything. And I like games where like they wanted me to really teach me mechanics. They do something interesting with the mechanics where they really trying to give you, they go the extra mile for that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, I never felt that here. Not to say that it's necessarily something terrible or anything like that, but I really like games that try to do something interesting with the mechanics, especially because Caligula Effect has some interesting mechanics. If you, in a simple way, if you want to kind of know the mechanic itself, they start a game by kind of throwing you into a battle. You start a battle, and you can actually calculate a couple turns ahead. You know, so you get to calculate a couple turns ahead, choose who's gonna move where and how they're gonna attack and everything like that. And once you start that, you kind of know like where you're gonna move your characters and everything. You can also see how the characters are gonna act themselves and everything, so you see the way that they're gonna interact with you and everything. And that mechanic also happens in the first game, so not much of a difference in there. However, I really wanted them to do something new with the mechanic because I think it's a good mechanic, but I don't think it's fully explored. Unfortunately, this game doesn't do anything different with that. And although I do love the new style for it, the new things for it and everything like that, I really didn't feel that they really went deep enough on this part. I don't think, again, I don't think it is bad because it does have some depth to it. I just think the potential for the particular gameplay they are going for, it's not there yet. And I feel like it has a lot of potential. It really does. It just doesn't feel like it's 100% there yet. But besides that gameplay style, there's actually another gameplay mechanic that this game builds, and this is something that actually is known on other games like the Persona games, which is why a lot of people consider this game to be some sort of Persona clone in a lot of different aspects. I personally don't think it's a clone per se, but it does use a lot of those same mechanics. And this is the mechanic of these links. They actually, you have these social links basically, where you can have these conversations with people or with other members of your team, and you can, they're basically a rank, and you can unlock additional conversations and everything. Unfortunately, these social links or these conversation talks are actually kind of just boring. Unfortunately, they're interesting, obviously, because the characters are interesting, and definitely I love the way that a lot of the characters, I thought some of them were really funny, some of them were cheeky, some of them were interesting, but fortunately they don't do anything with the social link where it really has an excuse to exist. It's just kind of there. That the same thing, I had the exact same problem with the previous game, where the social links are, it's not that the social links do anything, it's just they don't do anything. And I found that was kind of the issue. There's no reason for them to kind of exist in the Caligula Effect universe, because they're not really happening for any particular reason. I feel like if there was some kind of reason why they were there, I will excuse them. I will say like, oh, you know, this is why they have this mechanic, or this is why they don't have the mechanic, or something like that. Unfortunately, I never really felt like the mechanic was there for any particular reason, and I was really hoping that this game was going to do something to kind of make me think, oh, the mechanic needs to be here because this game made it better. Unfortunately, that is not the case. The mechanic's still just kind of there, and it can get a little confusing at times because there is more of a social aspect of it, where there is kind of almost like a connection with a lot of different people, not just the main characters that you meet on the way, but all these different other characters that you can potentially get to know as the story progresses and everything. Overall, not super impressive, nothing to write home about on this end. It really just doesn't justify its existence at this point. I feel like as somebody that has played the first game, I really didn't find much of an interest on this game. This game just doesn't do anything on that end, unfortunately. And I think, again, I do feel like there is a reason why this could be a cool mechanic. I just don't think that they are doing anything with it, unfortunately. And it does reflect at certain times when you're trying to do something. You're kind of like, oh man, this could have been a cool mechanic, but nothing really happens out of it. So that is a pretty unfortunate thing to say. And last but not least is the side quest. This game, obviously, as any other RPG in the world, is gonna have some side quest. And overall, I really wanted the side quest to be good because I didn't find them to be interesting on the first game, if any. They were just kind of sprinkled in as the story progressed, so it was nothing big in the first game. But I was really interested to see if they were gonna do something with it on the second game. And regrettably, the side quests are not super interesting. They could have done much in these mechanics. I think that there's a lot that they could have done with them, especially with the kind of world that living in. It's kind of like this is a dream world, and people have they're living in this world because of a lot of different reasons. Obviously, for spoiler reasons, I'm not gonna mention everything, but I think they could have done so much more as far as plot wise or side quests and anything. But a lot of the side quests are basic. Get this item, bring it back to them, use this skill, use this thing and everything. And I think there is some depth in there that could have been added. It definitely tries at first to kind of do that, but the side quests are nothing interesting to really bring home or anything like that. But again, that's not I don't think I was playing this game for that particular reason, but I was expecting them to kind of maybe do something like that. I would have been cool to kind of look at that mechanic and kind of do something with it. But unfortunately, side quest is just not there. Overall, I want to say the game is actually pretty good. I think that the first game left me a pretty bad impression with the game. So it's impossible to kind of go into the second game, the sequel, and not want to compare the two of them. So I apologize if my perspective is more on the perspective of I'm comparing it to the first game a lot, but it's because of my experience. I think I need to mention that again. But I really overall want to say, yeah, this game actually didn't disappoint at all. I think the game is a lot more solid than I was gonna give it credit for. I think overall, although I do have some nitpicks, which I mentioned more on the gameplay side of things and everything, it had a pretty good experience. I think the story was solid. I think the gameplay was pretty solid again. I think it has more potential for things, but it's nothing bad or anything like that. I don't think there's any bad qualities to it or anything. And overall, I think that they do some pretty interesting things with the world itself. I think that the world is definitely full of potential and full of different mechanics that could be explored maybe in the third game if they decide to do a third one. And overall, I want to say this is definitely a play if you are into RPGs, if you're into kind of games like Persona or Shin Megami Tensei. It is in the same branch and it does try to do its own thing, which I do appreciate when games do that. Is they're not just trying to rip off something, but they definitely try to do their own thing. And definitely this game does that itself. I'm really glad that they finally kind of found their style to it as well. This game is stylish in a lot of different aspects, like from the color, from the art design, the costumes that they all get, the weapons, the gameplay. Everything is very colorful, but also in its own way. It's not trying to be Persona 5 or anything like that. It's definitely just trying to be its own thing, and I appreciate that more than just kind of being a Persona ripoff or anything like that, because that's never fun. If you watch the same game or play a game that is just so similar to another game, it cannot take away from the experience. But this game doesn't do that. It's definitely trying to do more something, and I look forward to see what else they can do in the future. I think this is definitely a game that you should play if you're interested in it. It's definitely enough time from here all the way up until SMT5. So I think that if you're gonna play another RPG before SMT5, this one is a good one because it's on a good time frame too. It's not a really long RPG. You know, you start some RPGs, you're like, oh man, this is a really long RPG. These aren't super long or anything like that too. Luckily, they managed to cram a good storyline within a sizable amount of time. Anyway, thanks so much for watching this, guys. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Check it out if you are interested in this game, and also check out my other impressions on Monarch that I did earlier this week. Anyway, thanks so much for watching this, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.